everybody, your favourite Uncle Frog here again, and welcome to the second intense video, even more intense than the last one in fact. Now obviously it wasn't my intention to leave it so long, but I think I can tentatively say that this is the last terrible pun. Yeah. Okay, so this is going to be the video about the techniques used for making the hand-stitched woolen tent, the Geteld tent. If you haven't seen the first video, it's probably worth having a look at because this tells you about all the materials that you need and the general ideas that I had about how I was going to do this. Same as before, this self here is going to interrupt past self to explain things that went wrong or didn't quite work. The other thing is this ends up being quite a long video because there's lots of different techniques involved, the splicing of the ropes and the sewing techniques, and a very, very small amount of woodwork in there as well. What I will try and do, and I have no idea if I'm able to do this, I imagine that my future self will flash up something on the screen if I completely fail, or in fact, if I manage to, in fact, do what, Mr. Frog? Well, I'm going to try and put like little chapters or breaks into the video so you can just click on the important bit that you want to have a look at, so you don't have to watch all the way through. I mean, I'd like it if you did watch all the way through. That would be fantastic. But you don't have to if you don't want to, you know. So, here we go. Okay, so I've almost completed all the rope work for the tent now. I'm back up in the kitchen today because I can show you this easier on the table. And I'm going to show you a couple of the splicing techniques that I used. Yeah, I'd originally planned to do a T-splice over the ridgepole. That didn't really work out. And so in the end, I decided to do this. You can see that? Can you see that? Yeah, that's good. Show that up to the camera. This, I believe, is called a McDonald's bridle. So the ridgepole will go through here. And then on each end, I have spliced a loop, like so. Into each end so that the tent pegs will go through here, hold the whole thing in place. Okay, hello, me here, not that me, this me. Yeah, the thing that went wrong here was that I made all of the loops, so the loops for the pegs and the loop for the ridgepole way too big, I mean really way too big. The ridgepole loops maybe wouldn't have been a problem if I'd kept them at the same size I made them at, but the tent peg loops made a significant difference because it raised the height of the edge of the tent off the ground, which meant you'd have to have this massively long sod sheet, and so that was a bad idea. So yeah, back to me being me. You can see here that the ends are have been bound, actually called whipping. This is a piece that I haven't finished off yet. You can see this is 4-strand rope. So most of the techniques I could find on the internet, you know, your classic YouTube video, they were all to do with 3-strand rope. I have 4-strand rope. So I have just found something that works. I have no idea whether it's the best way of doing it. But it works. So I have been splitting my 4 strands into 2 strands. And so you can see here this is a 2-strand, and I've whipped the end here. But I thought it would be quite useful to show you how you do the end whipping, which is actually quite easy. I've got some quite thick, if I can actually get hold of it, come on, up you come. I've got some quite thick linen thread here, and you form a loop like this, and then you put your finger on here, hold with the loop formed towards, if you like, the open end. Okay, so loop, open end, and then we start winding this round, and we do it quite tightly. So I'm gonna take that away from the camera so I can wind it properly. And then I will bring it back up and show you the end result closer to the camera so you can see what's going on. But, we're just going to wind round and round and round, making sure that we keep this tight as we go. I actually rather like these techniques because they are elegantly simple. It's that kind of, who first came up with this idea? Whoever they were a genius, because it's just so simple, but it works so well. A little bit fiddly when you first start trying to do it, because you're not really sure of the process and you can only have thumbs and fingers, but once you've done it a few times, then you're okay. Now, as you can see, I've wound that up to that's focused, wound that up to about there, and I'm now going to put that thumb over there. Now you can see here, hopefully, that we've got a bit of a excess loop here, so we need to pull that way, pull it through. So it's going to be pulling on one end of this loop. And I actually got the right one first time round, so you'll probably see as I pull that pulls up nice and tight into there. So that's all nice and neat now. And then I pull down on this one. Now sometimes it spins a little bit. As you can see, it's twisting just a little bit as we go. And get it down to there. And then I've got this end. Now, I haven't done that yet, but I need to snip this end off. So let's just snip that off. And then this end, very simply, we pass through the loop. And it's gone through. And then on the other side, we pull that down until it touches. It's got a little bit caught. Some of the rope material's got caught. No, we don't want that. And then all I'm going to do is just pull this through. It takes a little bit of effort, and you probably can't see, well, maybe you can see that, but you can see the knot working its way down, and it's round about in the centre now. And then all I have to do is take a hold of both ends, pull it tight. Oops, don't let it slip. Pull it tight, which is now tight, and then snip the ends off. There we go. Second one snipped off. How cool is that? I just really enjoy doing this because it's just there's no knots on the surface. It's all nice and smooth. It's solid. It's held in place. I just think it's brilliant. Simple things please simple minds, and clearly I have a simple mind. Okay, the next thing, which I have been forgetting to do, is to take one of these. This is a piece of leather which I'm going to use as a reinforcer, so I don't end up wearing my way through the softer tenting material, or the woolen material, as I should say. And this is the reason why you whip the ends first of all, because then the rope doesn't fray, and you can just pass that straight through. That's going to go down. And then that's on there, and I'll put the woolen tenting material on there. This will go up, and I'll sew that over the top like that, and we'll just reinforce it. Also, I'm not worried about water not running off of this and pooling, because at that point it'll be below the sod sheet, so it won't matter too much. Okay, so that's got the ends fixed here. How do we form a loop? Well, I went for a very, very simple process here. As like I said, I believe it's called a Flemish loop. And I'm a bit weird. I operate in both inches and centimetres almost simultaneously. You'll see what I mean. So this I'm going to measure down. So it's approximately the same as all the others that I produced, down to 16 inches, down to here. I'll just put my thumb there. So that's 16 inches. I'm going to unravel that down to the 16-inch mark. Now, if you've got very slippy rope, if you think it's going to slip, start unraveling a little bit more, then you can just here before you unravel it, you can put a tie in there, tie it in place. If you're not being authentic, something like electrical tape works really well, and it stops it further going backwards. Because this is quite fibrous and quite solid, I just don't need to worry about it. Okay, so how do we form a loop? This is, again, really, really simple. We just turn it round, like so. That, oops, sorry, that doesn't really help, does it? Let's do that again in front of the camera. That was me being bad. So we're just taking this side, turning it down, this side, turning it down, and we've essentially formed a loop at this point. Now, I might end up getting the wrong size of the loop here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out where these match back up again. So that matches up like that, and then I can just turn this round and ease it in. Sometimes you have to kind of twist out a little bit like that to get it to go in, but essentially that's all you're doing. I'll turn it in, turn it in. Okay, so we've formed the loop, and now you can see my end strands. One of them is coming out one side of the loop, and the other one's coming out the other side of the loop. Now we need to stop this from unraveling. We do that by passing these two strands through some of the twists on this piece of rope. So, first thing we're going to do is, let's put that up here. This one is going to go over these two strands here. So it's going to go over those two strands and under these two. So we're going to pass that through there like that. Pull it through. It's nice and solid. And then we're going to take this one and go through in the other direction. It's opposite way around. Now, when you're doing this, you're going to need to kind of like fiddle it around a bit, and you might need to twist the strands a little bit to get them to lie better, because sometimes they just don't want to behave. Then, as you can see, we're like this. We're going to take this strand here, and again we're going to go over these two strands and under these two. So over these, under these. So again, twist it out, pass it through with a little bit of muttering but not much swearing. And the other one is going to do exactly the same thing again from the opposite direction, and then we're good. There we go. Okay, it's actually looking quite good. Okay, so that, you can see, gives us our finished tie-off. Now, this isn't the strongest of loops that you can form. There are other ways of producing even stronger loops, but I'm not trying to hold a long ship in place. I'm just trying to stop my tent from falling over. So I think this will do. The other option I have here as well, that binding technique that I used, or the whipping technique I used on the ends here, I could also whip either round here and hold the whole thing in place, or whip round this point here and support that. That would also strengthen this this splice, but I don't really need to do that. The next thing, of course, is that I need to put in the bridle, the McDonald's bridle. So the first thing to do, and this one is done in centimetres, because that's just the way it works out. Like I said, I tend to work in both. So starting from the end of this thing, I know that I need to be 285 centimetres along the rope. Okay, so that's 135 to there. And this time I'm just going to very quickly mark that position with a little bit of linear thread so I don't lose it, so I just know approximately where I am. Now, so that's got that marked up and it's falling off the table. Well, I don't want to do that, so let's just grab that and sit it on the table so it doesn't suddenly launch itself off. There we go. Then we need the other end of the rope. So we marked our space where we need to put the bridle in, and then we twist the rope apart, 2 strands one side, 2 strands the other side, and then we pass. Can you see that? So just literally just do that. Open it up, and then we're going to pass both of these through the hole and pull it through. We don't need to be particularly accurate to begin with, so the loop size that we're forming here isn't absolutely solid yet, but that gives me my first loop, you see, just like that. And then we want to pass it back again, so we need to find our ends. We go all the way down here, big tent, and at this point, if we can see it, where it twists, so it twists around, and then I open up that second loop there, like so, and then I pass them through there, like that, and pull it back through. Give that a bit of a twist, get that to work. There we go. And that is the Madonna's bridle. It's really, really simple. Now, size-wise, that looks like it might be a little bit too big. So let's just check that against the one I already made. And yes, it's a little bit too big. So we want to make that a little bit smaller. So we can just ease it off a little bit there. Pull that through a little bit more. And check. Yep, approximately. That's now approximately the right size. And then I pull that up, and that's essentially locked in place. Now, again, whipping this round here might be a clever idea to make sure it doesn't move. I think I probably would do this if it was open, but it's not going to be open. There's going to be material round here and a leather reinforcer going around this point here, and then more material going around the top. So it's unlikely to. It's just not going to move in normal usage. This gives me, obviously, on the other end of this now, I have to put another loop, and that gives me my kind of tent peg in the ground with Flemish loop up to the top, McDonald's bridle, down to the other side, Flemish loop. So I won't do that on camera. What I will show you is what the other end, the bell ends look like. The bell ends are a little bit more complicated. So, again, I've lost my rope. So this is the McDonald's bridle here, so that's the top. And then this little bit here, which I've got, passes through that and rests on the bridle like that. So this is my ridgepole. This is the upright pole coming up here. And I've got 3, I'll just take that off because it makes it easier. And I've got 3 ropes coming off of this. So I'll end up with 4 panels on the end of to form the bell. Now, this bit here, this first bit here, this is just another normal Flemish loop. It's a bigger loop than the one before, But that's all it is, just a normal loop. And of course on the other end, another Flemish loop for the tent peg. Now this here is is it seizing or sizing? Seizing, sizing, something like that. I can't remember which one it is now. Again, it's like whipping. You wrap it round, and this holds it nice and solidly in place. So I've essentially formed two loops. I won't do that on camera for you, but I will put in below. I will put a link to how you actually do that. And then here on both sides, I've got a T-splice, and the T-splice uses basically the same techniques that we used for the bridle and for the Flemish loop. This has been split out into two lots of two. We then pass it through a twist, but just two parts here and two parts here, not the whole thing. Wrap it back over the top, and then pass it back through the rope, just like we do here when we're forming the Flemish loop. And that gives me all of my rope work. Okay, let's talk about the material. This is a wool, it's a heavy melton. You can get different weights. Mine is quite a heavy version of this. You can get lighter versions. A friend of mine has a lighter version. Their tent functions extremely well. You can see if I hold this up, you can see it's quite thick. One of the first problems we run into with this is pinning it, and so you do need to get hold of some serious pins, so long and fat pins. I'm sure they have a special name. I can't remember what they're called, but serious pins, that's what you need. We need to make a double fell seam, which is on here. This was a test piece, by the way, that I got some people who were... I taught a class in tent making, and these were little test pieces that people made up. So they got a good idea of how to do the ropes and do the material. But you can see here that the double fell seam goes round the rope. Now there's two ways of doing this. You could produce the double fell seam and then pull the rope through, but once you've done that, you're going to have to sort out your loops at either end. Whether it was a good idea or not, I decided to do it the other way around. I made my rope framework, checked that functioned, and then kind of encased it in material. And so you have to do this a slightly different way around. So how do you make a double fell seam to go round something? Well, the first thing to do with this is the 10mm rope, and so here, if I can just put the tape measure up, you can see this is approximately 3 centimeters and 3 centimeters. So the piece of material behind is pinned at 6 centimeters. The piece of material in front is pinned at 3 centimeters. You then stab stitch through here. What do I mean by stab stitch? I'll show you with the pin here. You go straight through. You don't go through at an angle like this. If you can see that, is that okay? Yeah. Instead, you go straight through. Does this make a difference? Well, yes, it does. But, oops, just lost that. Put that back in there. If you don't do the stab stitch, if you do essentially a running stitch coming all the way through, you can start kind of puckering the material up, which is not a good idea. So once we have done our stab stitch down here, then if you imagine, we can roll all of this round like so, and that gives us our double fell seam, and we can roll that round the rope. Once we've done that, then we take our pins again and we start pinning down here and actually into the rope. And obviously there's no rope in there, but you get the idea. And then we do a whip stitch, which is this one, which is just going down like so. The disadvantage of this is that it's quite loose. It might be better to actually do it the other way around. I don't know. If you're absolutely certain of your rope construction and how you want to have that rope construction, then I think I probably would sew. You'd have to do a check piece first of all to make sure you can actually pass your rope through the fell seam, but I think I'd probably do it the other way around in retrospect. Me here again, in retrospect, in retrospective, whatever. Anyway, thinking about it a second time or third time, thinking about it from this point, I think that was probably the better option. Trying to pass all of that ropage through quite thin, essentially tunnels, would have been really difficult because the melton is quite a fibrous wool, and obviously the hemp rope is extremely fibrous as well, and so there would have been a huge amount of resistance trying to get it through a tighter hole, as it were. Anyway, back to me. Another thing we need to think about is the sod sheet. What's that? Well, taking this test piece here, let's get the pins out of the way. This is the piece that is pegged into the ground. So this is the rope loop, and the peg goes through here. And then, as you can see, you've got a bit of distance between where this is going, because, I mean, if we think about it, when the peg goes in, it's not going to be right touching the ground. It's going to be slightly above the ground. And so we've got all this space. Let's just hold that up there. We've got all this space here. And we want to seal the environment inside the tent. We don't want wind and water and whatever else coming in from underneath. And so we need to sew an extra piece on like this that comes down from here and goes down onto the ground. It needs to be quite long because it doesn't want to just touch the ground. It wants to go onto the ground and run along the ground for, sort of 5-10 centimetres, 10 centimetres is probably better actually. And then that makes sure that you have something constantly in touch with the ground, so there's no wind or rain getting through. Obviously, this end, I mean, this is just a test piece, so normally you'd have this end rolled round and sealed. And then on the flip side, where the seam comes up, you can take your you probably can't see that particularly well, but where that's rolled round from here, you can take your sod sheet down to the ground. What material should that be made out of? Should you make it out of linen? Well, no. Some people thought, maybe linen would be better, but linen tends to rot more than wool does, so you're better off using wool for your sod sheet there. One of the other things we should talk about is cutting this stuff, because it is very, very thick. And I have a very nice pair of modern dressmaking scissors, and they just did not work. In the end, I started using these authentic ones, and they are seriously heavy duty, and it was only these that could actually cut through this without twisting or bending. So again, if you're thinking about doing this and you have the very heavy melton, be prepared that your scissors might not be kind of up to the task. The last thing I want to talk about is the ridgepole. Now, if we're being 100% authentic, the ridgepole will be one piece of wood. But because we travel to events in modern cars, and most modern cars don't have the space either internally or externally on the roof for a complete ridgepole, what we tend to do is to put a collar onto it. Now, there's two ways of putting a collar on. You can just add a piece of steel, obviously hollow steel, either square section or round section, onto the top. But then you'll have this lump either end, and you'll see it when the tent material is in tension. The other way is to make your tent ridgepole the same dimensions as the outer dimensions of your steel. And this is a relatively easy thing to do. You're going to need a tenon saw, and you're going to need a sander, and you're going to need a router. The tenon saw is for this piece here. So you measure half the length of your steel, and you cut down to the thickness of the steel. You then start at this end with the router and work backwards on one side, rotate it, work back down to here, rotate, work back down. We have to put that saw mark in because that gives us a nice neat ending point for our router bit as it gets down here, and you don't end up having a weird wiggly line at this point. Now, on the other side, which has the steel on it, which I'll show you in a minute, all we need to do there is to router this down to exactly the same thickness as the steel and hammer the steel on. Then it will just stay in place. As the wood dries out, it might become a little bit loose, but that just means it's time to put some boiled linseed oil onto your wood and let it expand back out again and hold in place. On this side, which is the side obviously that slots into the steel, you need to take your sander and sand down a little bit on all four sides, so it gently kind of it fits in, but with a little bit of tension. On the other side, we've got the solid piece of steel, and I'll just move that around. There's going to be some clanking and banging as I do that, so bear with me for a moment. But you can see this gives us a nice, neat fitting here. It's not exactly on, but it's probably about 1/2 mil out completely, and so you just don't see that when the tent's in tension. So this is a really simple thing to do. And on the other end, because it's my Geteld tent and I've got these two uprights, one at each end, I've just done a very, very simple track. Oh, this is not going to work. Bear with me for a moment whilst it all goes weird. And then here you can see we just have a mortise joint to hold the thing in place. And the mortise is the width of the piece of wood for my upright. Hello, me again. This isn't me correcting something. This is me having used my tent quite a number of times in very hot weather, very cold weather, and extremely wet weather as well. A couple of things I've had to change, but in general it's worked out really well. So I thought it'd be useful to do a little bit of a what's it been like using the tent end piece, positives and negatives. Negatives. The big negative, I will put a picture up now actually of me standing in front of the tent bag. This tent, the footprint of the tent, it's 4 meters wide and 9 meters long, so it's quite a large tent. But if you're used to using canvas tenting, you know how small that will pack down to. But this is the bag that it packs into. It is a large space that it takes up, and it is not good, really. Yeah, a little bit difficult to transport. Weight-wise, how heavy is it? Well, if one person's lifting it, it's kind of to lift. If it's two people, then it's easy. I mean, it's just about liftable with one person. Theoretically, you could probably put this tent up on your own. It's a whole lot easier with people, but yeah, there's ways of doing it. It's extremely waterproof, which is very, very good. It tends to stay cooler in hot weather and warmer in cold weather, especially if you light some candles or tea lights, or you have like some kind of tent warmer that you can put inside. I was up in Sweden at the beginning of May, and the nights got a little bit chilly up there, but with the with a little bit of candlelight inside the tent, it actually made the thing very warm and very, very cozy, which was really, really nice. Another advantage of the thickness of the tent is that you don't do that kind of, shadow dance, which you always do in cotton tents. You are completely sealed off from the outside world. Nobody's going to watch you getting changed and laugh at you in some weird and wonderful way. The negative side of that, of course, is it's always dark inside the tent, and so you do often need a light in there. Does the tent dry out quickly? Well, yes, actually, surprisingly so. In light rain, it tends to only kind of stick to the hairy part of the tent, but the main part doesn't really get that wet. Drying times are pretty much the same for standard thick cotton canvas tent. I did make a mistake on the back end of the tent, on the back part of the belled end. So there was a little bit of water getting in there. It was running down the tent pole. But I think I've got a picture. If I haven't, I'm very, very sorry, but I'll try and find a picture which shows leather ends that I put onto both the front and back part. This fixed the problem of the leak. It's also strengthened that section, which was always a little bit weak because very thin pieces of width-wise, that is, of material were meeting up there, and so the leathers helped to strengthen that. Cost is the really big problem with this thing. I mean, obviously, what is expensive is a relative thing based on your income, but it is expensive. Obviously, that depends on the size of the tent. The smaller the tent, the cheaper it is. This is not something that you want to enter into lightly if you're on a limited budget. Is there anything that I still need to do on this tent? Well, yes. I probably need to find some way of tensioning the not the sideways tensioning, but the up and down tensioning, because if it's up for more than a couple of days, then the wool starts to work its way up the ropes. A friend of mine, he made a tent and he thought this through right from the beginning, and he has a tensioning rope on the bottom. I saw that. I didn't put that in because I didn't think it was really necessary, and I wasn't sure how much stretch I would get this way with my wool. So I need to figure out some easy way of retrospectively fitting that to retroactively, which is the right word, I don't know. I need to do it. I need to make sure it doesn't start walking up. But generally speaking, it works extremely well. I'm very happy with it. Obviously, apart from the negatives, which are the weight and the amount of space it takes up when you're packing it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I mean, obviously it's a bit more technical, and if you're not interested in building tents, it's probably not that interesting at all. But you could still try and comment, rate, subscribe, do all those kind of other fantastic things just because you love me. And I'll see you next time. Bye.